colleague of mine, you've not met Jyoti, and at Geosmart Decisions, and is leading the stakeholder engagement work on ECHO. So thanks very much, Jyoti.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Lovely to see so many of you here today. I know I've been in touch with a lot of you over email, so it's nice to finally put faces to names. So I'm going to be talking, sorry, I'll just load up my notes. I'm going to be talking about the stakeholder engagement side of the project, and then talking a little bit about sort of where you can find out about the project once it ends in June 2023. So just to begin, just in case any of you would like to ask us any questions or talk to us in the break afterwards, this is the team primarily who's been working on stakeholder engagement. So I'm Jyoti, I'm based at Geosmart Decisions. My colleague Holly Griffiths is here, also from Geosmart Decisions. We have Aoife Corcoran, who's based at University College Cork, and then Luke Lambert, who is here in the room, who has been leading many of our activities, there you go, many of our activities over in Ireland. So first of all, who are our stakeholders? So early on in the project, we sort of identified these groups as our kind of target groups. So that's the conservation sector, landowners and site managers, volunteer and citizen science groups, educational organisations, tourists and policymakers. These are the stakeholders who were sort of originally represented through our advisory board. And so how did we approach this task? So obviously there were many different aspects to our stakeholder engagement work, which involve different types of activities. So they sort of roughly break down into these categories. So first of all, local communities. So that's communities from sort of near the study sites. We engaged with these primarily on sort of the topics of climate change, biodiversity, and then sort of focusing on our two particular bird species. I'll give a little bit of an insight into the types of activities we ran. And then we held sort of different types of activities with regard to the ECHOS platform. So this was primarily with coastal land managers and policymakers. This took the form of sort of user requirement workshops in order to sort of gather requirements that then fed into the development of the ECHOS platform. And then a third type of way that sort of the project has engaged with people, particularly with research communities, is through conferences, through giving talks and presentations. As Kronos mentioned, those sort of research posters are available to see. They've moved various times during the day. I think they're now upstairs, but they might make their way down again. So in case you want to have a look. And then lastly, our activities on social media, website and the newsletter, which of course have been ways for us to reach new audiences, to let our stakeholders know what we're up to and how the research is progressing. So just to give you a bit of a flavour of sort of some of the types of activities. So this one was a walk and talk. It was a sort of a 1.5 hour guided walk that we carried out in Blackrock Estuary in Cork. So it was held in collaboration with a local wildlife NGO. This was our first in-person event in Ireland and sort of our second overall. So we really started in-person events in March 2022, so a year ago. So this one was led by Luke and colleagues at UCC. So it was a guided walk, sort of introducing. So talking about the changes that are being caused by climate change, in particular to native bird habitats. It was so this one was attended by about 29 people, and yeah, it was a very positive sort of first engagement for us. Sort of post-COVID, we were very pleased to have a session like this. And then another type of session, this was sort of a two-part engagement, which we held in Wales with a secondary school in Machynlleth, so just up the road from here. We held a first session in June and then a second one in December 2021. So in this one we were talking about, in the first session we spoke to the group. It was a group of 50, sort of 11 to 12-year-olds, so year 7. Talked to them about invertebrates. They'd been doing some activities sort of had been learning a little bit previously about insects, And we were able to sort of adapt and work with BTO to kind of modify materials so that there was sort of customized materials for the class. They carried out a session sort of digging for invertebrates. I think James mentioned this type of activity this morning. So yeah, they're digging for invertebrates in the school grounds. This was led by the ECHOS team and then sort of the science and technology teachers at the school. They then watched a video of Catherine, who was able to sort of compare their research to research that ECHOS is doing. It's a really great example of sort of citizen science. And then the session sort of linked invertebrates to food webs and sort of allowed for discussions on how food webs are being affected by climate change. And then we did a second session with them, which focused on some of the research with the geese. Another one of our researchers, Gemma Beattie, gives a wonderful talk, especially to young people, on how looking at goose poo is relevant, essentially, and that always goes down a treat. So we've been lucky to have held a few of those sessions. And then that session also sort of spoke a little bit about her personal trajectory into becoming a researcher, especially with young people. We have tried to sort of promote the study of STEM subjects, in particular with young girls. This initiative was sort of very positively received by the students and also by the teachers. So the feedback that came back from the science teacher was that climate change is a topic that often gets talked about, but rarely in relation to the natural world local to the UK. The work with ECHOS allowed us to expand our knowledge of the effects of climate change on nature, where previously much of our focus had been on insects and hibernating species. So this was really positive feedback for us. The teachers were very keen to integrate a lot of the learnings and the materials that we developed into their sort of medium and long-term teaching plans. I should mention that in large part because of COVID and the lockdowns and schools being closed and sort of the knock-on effect on teachers and on their time, we found it a bit challenging to sort of work with schools, and decided then that because teachers were under a great deal of pressure and there's a lot of unpredictability. So we decided to sort of shift focus and start working with school-age children, but through kind of out-of-school groups. So we worked a lot with Scouts, Brownies and Guides. So in Ireland, we did 3 different sessions with different Sea Scout groups, and in Wales, 2 sessions with a Brownies and Guides group. So the initiative that you can see pictured here was, I think, in Ahada, just outside Cork. This was sort of a guided walk down to the estuary, where the group was able to look for birds. It wasn't in the sort of winter season, but they found heron. They were delighted. They enjoyed looking through the binoculars, and then went back to sort of the back indoors, and Fiona and Luke were able to talk to them about sort of some of the changes to coastal areas and coastal habitats in particular. I think as Mary sort of wonderfully said this morning, to know curlew is to love them. And so we tried as much as possible to sort of hold our kind of guided walks and things, and at times when people could see curlew. Obviously, given that we're working with the wintering birds, trying to schedule guided walks in coastal areas, especially with children, was quite challenging. So we did sometimes have to adapt a bit. So some sessions took part in the sort of in the summer months, and we were able to look for other species. But we did very often use the curlew and the goose as sort of as the species that we would talk about, and to enable sort of larger conversations. This shows 2 of the sessions that we held in Towyn, so just north of the Dyfi estuary. So in the first session, which was an indoor session, we did lots of different craft activities. This was a 2-hour session, so we were able to cover quite a lot, and with different age groups. So we did some sort of arts and crafts. We talked to them in particular about the 2 species, really introduced them, talked about kind of bird migrations. and about climate change in general, kind of using cards that we had prepared, some of which are available to see outside. And then we talked to some of the older girls, about what it means to be a scientist. What does a scientist look like? So that's some of the drawings that you can see on the on the whiteboard. It led to some quite interesting insights into their minds. And then we held the group really enjoyed the session and asked us to come back later in the summer to do an outdoor session with them. So that's what you can see here on the left. So that we met them by the Broadwater, by the Deseni River, and we were able to talk to them about sort of different flora and fauna that they encountered in that area. So there's this, I'm not sure how clearly you can see, but we prepared sort of these sheets where they could look for different flora and fauna, and also some sort of phenomena like erosion, and then we had sort of conversations about those. In many of our activities, particularly with young people, we made use of the resources that we developed as part of the project. So here you can see the fact sheets on the curlew in Welsh and in Irish. And then we put together some sort of teaching and learning resources as well, sort of collating teaching materials from other sources as well. So highlighting in particular relevant themes like biodiversity and coastal habitats and climate change. Another type of resource that we put together was sort of targeted at landowners and farmers who many of our field workers sort of encountered while they were out doing the field, sort of accessing the base station or doing the tagging. So some examples of that type of material are there. So those were often sort of informal conversations that were had, and we were able to, the team was able to give them sort of an Echoes flyer and maybe show them a sort of an image of what was happening and some of the tracking movements in that area. So in terms of sort of formal, what we call awareness raising initiatives, so far we've carried out 27 of those. 19 of those have been in person, 8 have been online. One was that two-part activity with the school, and we've been really glad to be able to have a balance and have sort of more or less an equal number of activities in Wales and Ireland, and that's credit to we've been very lucky to have a great team over in Ireland. We have then also sort of carried out additional events and promotional activities which we have reported on. So some of the survey responses that have come from people who have attended many of those sessions have been, I've just pulled out the main ones, but so 80% of respondents highlighted that after engaging with Echoes through community events, they or their organisations made changes to their day-to-day activities. And then all respondents shared that they had further conversations with colleagues, family members or friends stemming from the learnings they acquired through those events. So that's sort of been very positively received. It shows that thankfully what we have shared with people has been used and passed on. Another way, obviously, in which we sort of try to gain new audiences and are able to reach more people is through publicity, through media coverage. So these show some of the major ones. So some of the birds from the Dovey appeared in Winter Watch back in early 2021. That has a huge reach. I think the viewing figures are sort of around the 2 million mark. And then we have been featured several times on BBC Radio Wales's Country Focus. So we've been lucky that the presenter and producer has really taken on the Echoes project, and she's really been a champion for the project. So we featured both in terms of talking of the curlew and the goose as well. I think the last programme was probably about a week ago or 10 days ago, so talking about the goose. So that's still available to listen to online. And then over in Ireland, we had our researcher from UCC, Fiona Corkwell, who did a very wide-ranging sort of interview on a popular show called Mooney Goes Wild. That was last year. So at the moment, over the next few months, we're sort of focusing on trying to disseminate the findings really through local media in particular, particularly in sort of around our study sites. So we have one article coming out tomorrow that covers sort of the south of the Dovey area, but we'll be working on trying to gain more of that type of coverage over the coming months. And then social media, it's a big one to cover, so I'll just mention sort of our highlight points. We have found that Twitter has been a very effective way for us to engage with special interest groups, in particular with the conservation sector and with bird enthusiasts. It's also been a great way for us to learn about what other projects are doing in the area, sort of similar campaigns or organisations. So, for example, Natur am Byth and Curlew Action, of course, both of whom are represented here today. We have around 750 followers on Twitter and have been more active there. But we have found that Facebook has been an effective way as well in terms of engaging with community groups. Just over there on the right, you can see the sort of one of our posts. Many of our sort of more popular posts are where we've been able to share tracking data. People are really, really interested to know what the birds are up to. And more recently, we have enjoyed sharing, and more importantly, our audience has enjoyed watching Rachel Taylor and the BTO team essentially go on a wild goose chase, in all sorts of conditions, kind of looking for the birds. You can see here on the left, that's Rachel doing a happy dance after finally identifying the flock of geese on Anglesey. This is one of our Welsh posts, and it received a very high engagement. So it's around 950 total engagements, which has been great. So we've liked to share sort of many insights from the field, and we've been lucky that colleagues have been willing to share what they've been up to as well. Another way in which we've shared that type of information is through blogs on the website. So Holly Sayer, who is here, wrote one for us just a few weeks ago, sharing sort of lovely imagery and an insight into how the fieldwork is happening on the Dovey Estuary. And then the newsletter has also been another way to keep in touch with with a range of stakeholders. So we've roughly published them once every 6 months. It's a mailing list of around 95 people. And the next newsletter is scheduled for May. If you would like to sign up, we promise we won't inundate you. Most likely it would be one update sort of in May and potentially one at the end of the project in June. But there is a sign-up sheet outside if in case you'd like to sign up. And then, as I mentioned, sort of a different type of activity that we've done, sort of engagement work, is working closely with colleagues at Compass Informatics, who you'll hear from next. So through this, together we were able to carry out user requirement workshops with 40 stakeholders. This was sort of in 2021 and 2022, and then at the end of last year we sort of worked, and you may hear a little bit about this in the next session, but we carried out sort of an introductory webinar, or sort of almost a bit of a soft launch of the platform, where we were able to share with stakeholders who we had previously engaged with, sort of how we had used many of their inputs and the development work that had been done on the platform. So that was attended by 39 participants, including sort of 20 external stakeholders. And the organisations represented were sort of Ceredigion County Council, Waterford City Council, the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, National Biodiversity Data Centre, NRW. So many of our key stakeholders. And then another important way, as I said, is sort of engagement at conferences. So as you would expect in this type of research project, this activity has sort of ramped up more as the research has progressed. So just to give you a sense of the last sort of 6 months, in August, in August, Kim presented in Montreal. Catherine in Hungary in September. In October, Kim Kenobi gave a talk as part of the Wales Biodiversity Partnership Conference, which was attended by a nationwide audience and about 60 people. And then these are sort of presentations and poster presentations given at the Irish Earth Observation Symposium and then at the British Ecological Society as well. So this is an important way that we've been able to sort of engage with research communities in particular. And then looking ahead, the things we'll be focusing on over the coming months will be, as I said, sharing findings in local media. That's something that we're very actively working on. Newsletter, we will be working again with Compass Informatics on preparing some videos, particularly on the platform that can be used after the project has ended, to show people what the platform is able to do if anybody, should anybody want to sort of take it on further. And then a general video about covering all the research as well. And then we're also looking at an online event to be held most likely at the end of May. If you'd like to know about that, if you just keep an eye on our Twitter, or if you'd like to sign up to the newsletter. And then just in terms, this is really about sort of where you can find out about the project once it's ended in June. So echosproj.eu will be the sort of main source of information. This will house up-to-date information on research papers, on any publications, and then detailed information about the platform as well, sort of including links to sort of GitHub, which is where the code and the documentation will be stored. And then our Twitter account will remain visible, though we won't be actively posting. Thank you very much. That's all from me.